That night, everything felt normal until Laura looked at Ethan with a cold, almost amused expression. She leaned back, crossed her arms. Vass said, "You really think you're the best I could do?" The words hit harder than a shout, slicing through the quiet like a knife. Ethan froze, unsure if he heard her right, but the dismissive shake of her head confirmed it. Something inside him cracked, a silent realization that this wasn't love and hadn't been for a long time. He felt the weight of years spent trying, bending, shrinking himself just to keep the peace. For the first time, he saw the truth clearly. This wasn't a bad moment. This was a breaking point. And as Laura kept talking, unaware of the damage she'd done, Ethan understood that his life was about to change in ways neither of them expected. The next morning, Ethan woke up in an unfamiliar quiet. No footsteps in the hallway. No sarcastic comments drifting from the kitchen. Just silence, pure, heavy, unsettling. He had packed his things the night before, moving with a clarity he hadn't felt in years, and now he stood in his small, rented room staring at the suitcases that somehow felt lighter than the relationship he had just left. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't rushing to apologize for something he didn't do. He wasn't trying to predict the emotional weather of another person. He wasn't fixing what he didn't break. He just existed. But the stillness forced him to face what he had been avoiding, himself. As he sat on the edge of the bed, Ethan replayed Laura's words in his mind. Not out of heartbreak, but because of the clarity they brought. They stripped away the excuses he had made for years. He realized how much he had let himself deteriorate, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. His job had become a routine that no longer challenged him. His body carried the exhaustion of late nights and stress eating. His confidence had eroded gradually, like a slow leak he never bothered to patch. He had poured everything into a relationship that gave nothing back, and in doing so, he had abandoned himself. He remembered how Laura used to criticize him for being too comfortable, yet never supported his attempts to grow. Every new idea he proposed was dismissed. Every step he tried to take forward was met with a reminder of how average she thought he was. It was a cycle he didn't notice while he was inside it, but now that he was out, the pattern was painfully obvious. Still, the truth wasn't that Laura had convinced him he wasn't enough. It was that he had accepted it. That was the wound he had to confront. Ethan walked to the bathroom and caught his reflection in the mirror. Puffy eyes. Unshaven face. A man weighed down by years of emotional wear. He looked like someone who had forgotten what it meant to take care of himself. But beneath the tiredness, he saw a flicker of something else, anger mixed with determination. Not anger at Laura, but at who he had allowed himself to become. That realization hit harder than her insult. He wasn't leaving just a relationship. He was leaving the version of himself that tolerated it. Ethan took a deep breath and made a silent promise. No more shrinking. No more neglecting himself. No more waiting for someone else to value him before he valued himself. He didn't know where to start, but he knew this. He would rebuild from the ground up. And this time, he would do it for himself. Ethan started his transformation quietly, almost secretly, as if afraid that saying it out loud would make it disappear. He signed up for a gym near his new place and forced himself to go, even on mornings when his body felt heavy and unfamiliar. The first week was brutal. His muscles burned, his lungs ached, and he felt embarrassed watching people who seemed to belong there while he struggled through basic exercises. But every drop of sweat reminded him that he was choosing himself for the first time in years. He cleaned up his diet, throwing out the processed meals and late-night junk food that once filled the empty spaces in his life. Cooking simple meals felt strangely empowering, like he was reclaiming control, one ingredient at a time. He spent evenings researching certifications to boost his career, staying up late to study instead of scrolling through social media or replaying arguments in his head. Little by little, the routine that once drained him began to fuel him. Meanwhile, Laura's messages started to come in. At first, they were casual, short check-ins, harmless questions, comments about things she saw that reminded her of him. Ethan ignored them, but he felt the old pull, the familiar instinct to respond to keep the peace. He fought it. After a few days, the messages shifted. She apologized, said she had been stressed, said she didn't mean what she said. She told him she missed him, missed them, missed their routines. Ethan read every word, but didn't type a single response. He knew where that road led. Silence frustrated her. Her texts became longer, more emotional, then sharper, blaming him for walking away so easily, accusing him of giving up on something she claimed he never truly tried to fix. But the more she reached out, the clearer everything became. He could finally see the manipulation he used to confuse with affection. Instead of pulling him back, her messages pushed him farther. As his days grew more structured and disciplined, he noticed changes in himself. He woke up earlier without an alarm. He carried himself with more purpose. He felt a spark he didn't realize he had lost. During a late-night study session, he received an email inviting him to interview for a role he had been too scared to apply for in the past. He stared at the screen for a full minute, stunned by how quickly life began to shift once he shifted with it. The next morning, he went to the gym with a new sense of confidence, not because he had achieved anything big yet, but because he was finally moving in the direction he had avoided for so long. All while Laura continued sending messages that swung between regret and frustration, trying to pull him back into the gravity of their old story. But he wasn't the same man anymore. He was becoming someone who chose growth over comfort, discipline over chaos, and himself over the version of life that once kept him trapped. And for the first time, he felt the momentum of real change pushing him forward. Laura's messages didn't stop. They multiplied. What began as occasional texts turned into long paragraphs sent at all hours of the day, as if she couldn't stand the idea of Ethan living a life that didn't revolve around her. When he still didn't respond, the tone of her messages changed again. She demanded explanations. She insisted he owed her at least a conversation. She told him he was being childish, cold, unfair. Ethan stared at the notifications lighting up his phone and felt nothing but a growing sense of distance. Ignoring her used to feel impossible. Now it felt necessary. But Laura wasn't someone who handled losing control well. Within a week, she showed up at his parents' house, arriving unannounced with tears streaming down her face. She told them she was worried about him, that he was acting out of character, that she just wanted closure. His mother listened politely, but she had seen enough over the years to recognize the emotional storm for what it was. She kept the conversation brief, and when Laura pushed harder, his mother stood firm and asked her not to return unless invited. That only made things worse. Laura began sending Ethan guilt-laced messages about the encounter, claiming his family hated her, claiming she was being treated unfairly, claiming he had turned everyone against her. Ethan read them quietly, feeling a mixture of frustration and clarity. This was who she truly was when she didn't get the reaction she wanted. Her need for control overshadowed everything else. One night, while Ethan was studying at his desk, his phone buzzed nonstop for nearly 15 minutes. When he finally looked, he saw 20 missed calls and a series of frantic texts saying she was driving over, that they needed to talk, that she couldn't sleep without answers. He turned off the phone and sat in the dark, feeling the old anxiety rise in his chest before slowly fading away. He realized he wasn't scared anymore. He was just done. Over the next few days, Laura's behavior continued to deteriorate. She sent angry messages, followed immediately by apologetic ones. She blamed him for her stress, then claimed he was the only one who ever understood her. She said she hated him, then said she still loved him. Her instability was impossible to ignore. And for the first time, Ethan saw how deeply toxic the relationship had been. He remembered the subtle put-downs, the backhanded compliments, the emotional whiplash that had once felt normal. Distance made everything obvious. While he was rebuilding himself piece by piece, she was unraveling. It wasn't his responsibility to catch her anymore. He had spent years trying to protect her feelings at the expense of his own. Now, he finally understood that stepping away wasn't cruelty. It was survival. And as Laura's messages grew more desperate, Ethan felt something he never expected: relief. He wasn't slipping back into the old cycle. He was watching it end. Ethan's life moved forward faster than he expected. Weeks of discipline began to show visible results. His clothes fit differently. His face looked sharper. Even the coworkers, who barely noticed him before, started complimenting his energy. But the biggest change came the morning he opened his email and saw the subject line he had been hopping for. He had gotten the job. A position with higher pay, real growth potential, and a team that seemed genuinely excited to bring him on. He sat in silence for a moment, letting the news sink in, feeling pride instead of the dull numbness he used to associate with work. This wasn't luck. This was the product of every late night he pushed through, every hour he forced himself to grow while his old life tried to pull him back. Laura's unraveling didn't slow down. It accelerated, as if every improvement in Ethan's life pushed her further off balance. Her academic plans collapsed first. She failed key exams for her MBA program, something she later tried to blame on the emotional stress Ethan had caused by leaving. Her professors noted inconsistent attendance and lack of focus, and soon she was removed from the program entirely. It was a blow she wasn't prepared for. Not long after, she lost her job. Coworkers reported emotional outbursts, missed deadlines, and moments where she disappeared for hours with no explanation. Each setback fueled her panic, and each panic drew her attention back to the one person she felt slipping away more than anything else: Ethan. Ethan didn't expect to see Laura again, but life had a way of staging moments he never asked for. It happened on a quiet Saturday afternoon at a local brewery he often visited with coworkers. He walked in expecting an easy day, a drink, maybe a conversation with familiar faces. But as soon as he stepped inside, he felt the atmosphere shift. There she was. Laura sat alone at a corner table, hands wrapped around a half-finished drink, eyes fixed on the doorway as if she had been waiting for him. Their gazes met, and something inside her seemed to crack open. She stood up slowly, almost cautiously, like she was approaching a stranger instead of someone she once claimed to love. In the weeks that followed, Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. His mornings were steady, his routines balanced, and his mind no longer tangled in old doubts. Work felt purposeful, not draining. His body grew stronger, his confidence steadier, and every part of his life reflected the effort he had poured into rebuilding himself. Megan's presence became a quiet, steady warmth in his days, reminding him that connection didn't have to be chaotic to be real. For the first time, Ethan truly believed he deserved the good things coming his way. One evening, as he walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, he thought back to the moment everything changed. Laura's cutting words had once felt like a wound, but now he saw them clearly for what they were: a catalyst. A spark that forced him to confront who he had become and who he wanted to be. He didn't feel anger anymore, only gratitude for the clarity that pushed him forward. He had learned that when someone says you're not enough, you don't have to break under it. You rise. You rebuild. And you become better for yourself, not for anyone else.